So it's Laura Keller here with the We Know Lanark County podcast. I'm here with Bob Volks from Gilligallou Bird Store in Almont. How you doing,
Good.
Bob?
You got it. Good stuff.
It's such a fun word to say, so I'm sure you like to say it as often as you can.
Well, it's one of those things. It's people either know what it is and sort of talk about it, or they don't know what it is and say, "What is that?"
So can you explain Gilligallou to everyone for us?
Well, yeah, sure. It's actually a mythical bird from the Paul Bunyan stories. And my grandfather, we had a generational dairy farm, and my grandfather was enamored with the Paul Bunyan stories. So if you got caught doing something that you weren't supposed to be doing, he would call you a Gilligallou bird.
So it's stuck.
So it stuck, yeah. So when we were putting the whole thing together almost 10 years ago,
Yeah.
it just kind of struck me one day as to what are we going to call this thing? And I was driving around and I heard my mom was one of 10 kids and all of her brothers said it as well. So
There you go.
I heard it and I went, there it is. So it's the Gilligallou Bird Inc.
Wow. So like you said, almost 10 years.
Yep.
Obviously, this isn't your first career. So how did you get into owning a bird store?
People ask me that all the time.
It's so specific. It's such a niche thing that there has to be a reason.
So it's something that I've done on a personal level for a very long time. I did it all my life. My mom did it because we came from the farm, and I'll back that up a little bit. And what makes it kind of unique and where I sort of learned this nurturing, I guess you would call it, the family farm of the 1960s and 1970s was a whole lot different than 2020, obviously.
No kidding.
I always got to, or when I was like 10 or 12 or 13 or whatever, throughout those times, when we'd go to cut hay, my cousin and I, or whomever were around, would be requested to walk the hayfield in a pattern to make sure that all the grass and ground nesting birds that would be in the meadows were done nesting before we cut the hay.
Wow.
Obviously, that doesn't happen anymore, and I'm not saying that to be malicious.
Sure.
It just was a different era. And so those kind of things stuck with me, and I went through life enjoying the birds, taught my kids all about birds and nature. And when the 4-H was around, instead of going to the swine club or the equine club or the calf club, I went to the forestry club. And it's just something that I've always been involved in. So when I kind of retired-ish, that's when we opened.
Wow, that's exciting.
Mostly the other side of that is, sorry to interrupt, but the other side of that is it's like a lot of other niche markets, whether it be golf or anything, hockey, or there's a lot of poor product on the marketplace and there's a lot of good product on the marketplace. And a lot of times the consumer doesn't know the difference.
Yeah.
And that was the foundation that we started with, because I realized from being involved in that, birding and nature and what have you all my life, there was a lot of stuff in the marketplace that it's made. I always talk about anybody that knows anybody that is a fisherman knows that the fisherman has umpteen million tackle boxes of stuff that was designed to catch the fisherman, not to catch the fish. And the market is quite the same in the birding and nature world. There's a lot of inferior product that's designed to be profit driven for the consumer.
Same with human food.
Same with human food. Same with dog food. I always use the analogy of dog food. There's a lot of stuff out there that says dog food on the bag, but you wouldn't feed it to your dog.
Right.
And so that's where we started and how we started.
Well, the philosophy is so clear, and I think it comes across in the store because, like, when you go in, for people who haven't been, you can tell that everything is quality because you don't see it anywhere else.
Exactly. And it's a difficult thing. I've found it interesting, and in all levels of consumerism and or in even real estate and everything else, there's a fine line there between your values in terms of what you're doing, and looking at the dollar and going, well, if I would do that, I could probably make a little more money. Even, it's ethical and it's legal and all that kind of stuff. I don't mean it that way. But so we have a whole host of products that people look for all the time that we don't have because they're no good.
Yeah.
And so we have to stick by our mission and carry forward.
So do you find a lot of what you're doing is education when people come into the store and ask for those
Absolutely, yeah.
products? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we break it down a little bit, even in our, our data management and our email and list and things. We look at it like the beginner, the intermediate, and the real serious person, and sort of try to create that content that caters to those three groups. And then the age groups too. It's kind of interesting. I really find it interesting that the millennials with their children are now becoming more conscious and aware of nature and conservation and habitat creation and all the things that we talk about on a regular basis, and are coming in and wanting the information and wanting the knowledge. And that just fires me up, to be honest with you, because that's what it's all about.
It should fire you up. It's hard to find that information that's reliable. It's but to come in and talk to a real person who has seen and done all of it, you're a great resource. And I don't know that everybody's aware of all the information you have to offer.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We have tons of stuff on our website. We have tons of stuff on our YouTube channel. We have tons of stuff on our Instagram account, and we just keep on keeping on because, I think a great example is one, a very senior gentleman was in the store a couple of years ago when I was talking to him about native grasses and wildflowers and things. And the particular type of grass that we have on our lawns often is Kentucky bluegrass. And when you look at the grow zones, like the zone 1, 2, 3, 4, where heat and what have you, I mean, that's historically changing and stuff as well. But I said to him, it doesn't last because the weeds take over what's called weeds.
Yeah.
They take over the grass and then they spray reseed. 3 or 4 years later, they spray reseed. And he just looked at me like his mouth was hanging open. And he said, I've lived in the same house for 45 years. I've done that every 3 years for 45 years. Yeah. And it's that type of thing that we like to get across. He didn't have to spray all those pesticides and herbicides. Mm-hmm. But that's the first thing that society pushes us to these days.
Well, it's a quick fix.
Yep.
Yeah.
Quick is the operative
Everyone
word
wants
there.
The 6-minute abs and easy payment of $29.95,
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. Nature doesn't work that way.
Not at all.
You're from the area, aren't you?
I've been here about 15 years. I'm originally from out south of Ottawa in the Winchester area. Right. So I've been around here for a while, though. Where's
Louise from?
Same place.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you grew up together.
We did, as my father-in-law used to say, we went to separate schools together.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah. So we actually went through high school together. Didn't really. I mean, we were in the same kind of group and what have you, but didn't really have anything to do with one another until about 14 years ago. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, much later in life, you reconnected. That's such a great story.
Yeah, it's fun.
What was your background before opening the store? What did you do for a career then?
How much time do we have? Well, I was wondering if you were going to ask that, but I mean, I have a million things that I've been involved in, multiple different businesses over time and all kinds of different things. I was a landlord, yada, 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 but I was a licensed realtor for 27 years.
Yes.
And that was my primary career, I guess. I was an ambulance attendant. I worked in a group home as a counselor, younger days, drove a truck, drove a hammer, all those things. Yeah. But my primary career has been real estate. Yeah.
And you don't practice anymore, right?
On a personal level, yeah, but as far as working with the consumer, no, I don't. Yeah, no. But I'm still involved, sort of from an investment perspective.
Yes, yeah. So as a realtor myself, I'm 10 years in at this point. What's your biggest piece of advice for me?
Whoa.
Have I opened a can of worms?
No, not at all. I think the big thing, I mean, when I was really sort of running hard, I did a lot of things wrong. And I had the work harder, not smarter mentality to some degree. But at the same time, that sort of paved the way. And I like, anytime that I've mentored many realtors and many people in business and stuff. I always like to say that you have to find out what you don't want first to know what you do want. And I found out quickly that I don't want to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So inside of that, let's pick then what you do want. And when you pick what you do want, let's lay out a strategy that makes that work.
Yeah.
And I have experienced so many realtors that have gone from almost quitting to a high quality of success, that it's really heartwarming to see that. And I think it applies to all businesses and to all lifestyles, even if you're employed. I think but so the biggest thing to me is to lay out your wants in terms of who's your client, what's your neighborhood, what's your price range that you want to sell in, all that kind of stuff. You're going to be so when I had at one point, I had a full-time administrator and a full-time buyer's rep, and I did part of the listing, and the full-time administrator was also licensed.
Yeah.
So there was 3 licensed people working on my business.
Yeah.
And I couldn't even have done a quarter of what we did because of it. But then we built the strategies. But then the other side of the fence is that we invested. We had a marketing budget. We had strict guidelines as to what we were going to accept as a client, both on the listing side and the selling side.
Yeah.
And we adhered to that. I mean, you fall off the wagon every once in a while and do something you don't want to do, but we tried to stay right with that. And if it didn't fit,
for all entrepreneurs, stay
absolutely. And
what you want to do.
And it's true to our niche at the store. Like I was saying a few minutes ago, we could very easily jump into a whole wide variety of products that would probably help our bottom line.
Yeah.
But that's not what I want to do.
Yeah. I notice on your blog, you also talk about foraging and other things that aren't related to birds necessarily. So you're sort of an all-round naturalist, I guess.
I like that word, but at the same time, I think that naturalist sort of implies something different than somebody else. And one of the real things that we really try to get across at the store that is very important in my view is to reconnect humans to nature. Because we're just an animal on the planet, the same as a groundhog or whatever. Like, it doesn't really matter. But we've lost that. We're the only ones that have enough foresight to screw it up. Everybody else just goes along and does what they got to do to get through their day as an animal. And so that's what it's more about. But naturalist is a thing for sure.
What do you call yourself?
Connected human.
Oh, okay.
And because if you think about it from that perspective, if higher percentage of society was connected to nature, do you think we'd do to the planet that what we're doing? Or to one another, for that matter? And I think that's the swing, like all of this contrast that we're experiencing politically and everything else. I think it's where we need to go to where we need to be.
So for someone who's doesn't feel connected to nature, who has never stepped outside their comfort zone, what would be the first thing that they should do to try and create that connection?
Well, first be aware of it.
Yeah.
That it's there. I mean, I go out with people quite frequently and or just with family members or whatever, and I'll say, "Oh, did you hear that?" And they'll go, "What?" It's like they didn't even know, so they're not aware at all, what's a native tree and what's a non-native tree? What's a native plant and a non-native plant? And is a non-native plant good for our ecosystem? That's pretty basic.
But it's
stuff.
Overwhelming for people who aren't into it. So what's the
Yeah.
How do you be aware? Did like talk to you? Is there
Sure.
a website or is there a book that someone should read? What's
Well,
the
I mean,
best thing to do first?
there's tons and tons and tons of things, but the first thing I would suggest is that people take their shoes and socks off and go out inside and stand in the grass and go out in the bush and lean up against a tree and hug it and feel it. And people think I'm weird and all. I hug trees all the time, but they have as much energy in their body as we have in ours.
And leave
And
the phone in the house.
leave the phone in the house unless you need something, take pictures, and then, well, whatever,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think just connect yourself and then start. Once you connect yourself a little bit, and Lanark County is an amazing place to be to do that.
Yeah.
You don't have to go very far. In fact, on our YouTube channel, I have a couple of different urban birding videos that I've done, and I did them in the parks here in Almont.
Yeah.
There's more nature in the parks here in Almont than you can shake a stick at. And so go out and observe. And if you don't know what it is, I get messages constantly as to what's this bird and what's this where and why did I, who's this, and that, which is great. And I love doing and responding. First, people have to see it to know it. And it's lots of fun. It's lots of fun. And that's the other side of it. It's lots of fun. And it's fabulous for kids. I have a 5-year-old granddaughter, and she's just enamored with rocks and nature and bugs and birds. And she FaceTimes me in the morning when the cardinal's in the feeder at her house,
Nice.
Yeah, it's awesome.
That's so nice to hear. For people who are getting their first bird feeder, let's say in Lanark County somewhere, what sort of birds should they be attracting, and what does that bird feeder look like?
Well, there's a bunch of factors there, and we won't go into a mile-long explanation here, but we get birds in winter that we don't get in summer, and we get birds in summer we don't get in winter. And we have different species that have different feeding styles and different food. So if you think of that in a general terms, we're going to offer appropriate feeding styles with appropriate food in a functional manner. You go down the finch class of family of species of birds, and you can go down the bug-eating side of the birds, and the seed-eating side of the birds, and the fruit-eating side of birds, and they all are here at different times of year and feeding in different ways. So we have that variety of feeding styles and feeders. Everybody has to fight with the non-wanted critters at their feeders. So squirrels, as an example, and some of the more undesirable birds, as an example. But a fly-through feeder is a fabulous piece of equipment in that it's essentially a tray and a little bit of a roof, and birds can go through it. So it accommodates everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody can go on it. And we put it on our pole system with a squirrel baffle, and it'll provide hours and hours of soulful experience, I like to say.
Where you can connect.
Where you can connect. Hey, you're catching on.
I'm catching on. Well, I bought that fly-through
feeder, right?
For Father's Day, and they just love it at the house. It's
awesome.
They moved out of the country into town, and we've always had birds at our homes, and the feeders are huge because even in town they still get so many different types of birds year round, like you say.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. I mean, there, some that might be a little big, and a little, the price point might not be right for people because it's a very reliable piece of equipment. It's all cedar, brass screws. It's very high quality. And then some of the other stuff that we have, the Squirrelbuster product. It's a Canadian company out of Knowlton, Quebec, makes a fabulous product, and you can get in for $50, and it'll cover a lot of bases. So. Yeah. There's lots of different things that we can accommodate people. And that's primarily one of our main focuses, really. And when I mentioned the millennials, they're the folks that are coming in and saying, Johnny's 3 and he likes to watch the birds, and we'll give them a window feeder or, and that kind of thing. And then they expand a little bit and get one outside the deck. And, it's good.
Yeah.
Real good.
It's really not expensive to start to invest in a good piece of, like you say, equipment that will last a while. You don't have to get something plastic and it's not going to last a season. It's not going to cost so much extra to get something that's going to last a few seasons.
Exactly. And we have, like, with the window feeders, that's great for kids. I mentioned my granddaughter. I
The
gave her one
suction
of the,
cups, right?
yeah, with the suction cup, and they work
Yeah.
really, really well.
Great.
They're silicone based suction cups, so they're not going to fall off the window every 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And then 95% of the plastics that we have in the store are recycled polycarbonate plastic. So the
Okay.
UV light of the sun and daylight doesn't break them down as quickly. Most of them have lifetime warranty on breakage.
Oh,
So
wow.
if it falls off the window and smashes, you bring it in, I'll give you a new one.
Wow.
And it's just makes it that much more enjoyable as well.
So how far are people traveling then to come to the store?
Um,
You did open one on Preston, didn't you?
yeah, we had one in the city for 2 years,
Yeah.
and our lease expired, and we had to look at a bunch of different things,
Mhm.
and we realized that our time was being split through many different things.
Yeah.
And I had a whole lot of trouble with my 25-year-old mind and my 63-year-old body. One didn't want to talk with the other. And so we thought, let's just focus. I loved it in Ottawa. It was a whole different consumer base. I think, we see a little bit of that here because we have so many people that have moved from the city out here.
Yeah.
So we see a little bit of that. But primarily, a lot of our customers are country people and have grown up in the country. So they just have a baseline, a bit of information and a bit of experience that an urban dweller doesn't have. And so exposing the urban people that have never lived in the country to a whole different concept
Yeah.
was quite rewarding, and it was a great group of people too. And that's the other thing about this business, and the same thing I said about the real estate business, is there's fantastic people that you get to work with. Be what you want to attract, I always say. It's always paid dividends for me, and the people that we attract are just fantastic people like you.
Well, you can tell your energy is you're very passionate about this, and I think that whatever you're passionate about, that will attract people to you when it's obvious that you love what you're doing. It's not just a job,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And particularly when it has an ending, in the sense that, with our mission statement that we're enhancing our customers' backyard birding experience, that connection, that thing to connect people. And as a realtor, if you connect with your client, it's a whole different experience than one that you don't connect with.
Yeah.
And that's where it's a whole different ballgame. You get people sending you thank you cards for something very minor.
Yeah.
I had a lady in Pennsylvania. I shipped her a thing, and we were talking on the phone, and I said, go to my website, pick what you want, and we'll package it up and send it to you. And one of the things that she wanted, she decided against it. And it was a very small thing. I put it in the box anyway. She didn't pay for it.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that, no disrespect at all, the fact that she was an American, she's not used to that.
Yes.
It was very Canadian.
Yeah.
to do that. Like, she was over the moon. It was like $10,
Yeah. And it shows that you're listening. It's for people just to be heard. I think a lot of that disconnect comes from more people talking than listening.
It's sure thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to ask, what is your favorite bird? Do you have one?
Well, there's many. I have all of them, but there's many that I have a deep connection to.
Yeah.
The cardinal's on our logo for a bunch of reasons, and the owls and the raptors and the warblers and of course the chickadee. Everybody loves chickadee.
Yeah, look at, I don't know if you can see it.
I see that. Yeah, I noticed.
Hand painted by someone, a teenager actually, who went in Beckwith.
Oh, nice.
Isn't that beautiful?
It's very beautiful. Yeah. So all of those. I had a lady actually send me a message on Instagram the other day, asking me if I could be a bird. What bird would I be? And I think. I don't think she really enjoyed the 4-page essay I wrote her, but not really. I just kidding. No, we just, the thrashers, I don't know if, or excuse me, the thrushes. I don't know if you know hermit thrush, wood thrush, Swanson's thrush.
I know the name, but I don't know much.
Yeah, they're quintessential Ontario birds in a way, because if you go into the forest here in Ontario, you're going to hear their fluty call, and there isn't much better than hearing that, actually. And I had one of our customers send me a note just this week and asking what this bird was. She sent me a recording. Here we go.
You gonna play it?
Yeah. So when you're standing in the woods and that wood thrush sings that song, boy, they're a ground bird. You very seldom see them. You always hear them. It's a calming effect. Like, it's
It
just
is.
very calming.
It is. Actually, I'm listing a place on March Road soon, and it's 5 acres, and it's got lots of mixed wood. And just walking to the very back of it, man, the number of birds we heard, and we were just walking silently with our shoes off, just bare feet in the grass, and it was
Nice.
beautiful. Just like you said, very calming. And I think a lot of people are looking for that now, especially during COVID, where a lot of people have been stuck in the city and not able to get out. Speaking of which, how has COVID affected your business, if at all?
We've stayed status quo, really, when on the business side of things. Our online e-commerce side, we've been working on for 3 or 4 years.
Right.
It's transitioned a lot of people directly to that would normally stand at the counter and buy what they wanted to buy. Our backdoor pickup and all that kind of stuff that we had was very good. But the opportunity that came out of that was interesting. And in that I did a kids show on Instagram stories and IGTV, excuse me, 3 or 4 days in a row, just to entertain kids and sort of help the parents a little bit get entertained.
Oh.
And then at the same time, we had an opportunity. We brought in a couple of different apps that we built into our system. And one of them had an opportunity to enable us to ship to the US. I would have never done it if COVID hadn't come along.
Right.
And so I'm a glass half full guy. And so the very day that they were shutting everybody down, I sat with my journal and I just sat for a few minutes, several minutes actually. And a lot of times I talk to realtors and business people and stuff I'm doing, I talk about thinking. And I always differentiate between thinking and mind activity. It's two different things. If you're actually sitting and thinking, you're actually calming your mind and getting rid of the noise.
Yeah.
And different things come to you at that time. So I do that every day, basically. And so I did. And at the top of the page, I just wrote COVID-19. And I sat there for probably 20 minutes, maybe longer. I don't know. I can't really remember. And the only thing that really came to me out of the process, I mean, there was all of the thoughts that go back and forth, but the only thing that really came to me to write down was how and what can I do to accelerate my sales during this time?
Mm-hmm.
I worked with that every day for 3 months.
Amazing.
That's all I worked with.
Yeah.
And we didn't blow the roof off the place in terms of sales and what have you, but at the same time, we did very well.
Well, it just goes to show an online presence is so important, and
absolutely,
a lot of small businesses don't see that when a lot of their traffic has typically been, walk by or people walking down the street or boutique shops that they don't have consistent product, and those are the businesses that I think were hurting the most. So the online presence is so important, and your website's really easy to navigate.
Oh,
so
thank you.
That helps too. Yeah.
We were talking in a business group the other day, and one of the things that we were throwing around was a bit of a mastermind thing, and I asked the question of a bunch of different business people, as to how much value they put on their data. And everybody was, and myself included, like we were trying to kind of sort of surmise what that meant. But your data is valuable. And if you're not creating content, you're not creating the data.
Yeah.
So, I'm interested in some succession planning with the business over the next few years here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm interested in hiring some people. And if I don't have the intrinsic value built into the business, it's not worth half of what it could be. Yeah. And I think that's a big point that business owners, I don't have time for blogging. I don't have time for video. I don't have time for social media. It isn't taking the time for the social media. It's taking the time to increase the value of your business.
Yeah.
And that's big.
Yeah. Well, this has been so nice chatting with you. As we kind of come to a close here, I have 2 questions that I'm asking everybody. So The first one is, what is your favorite hidden gem in Lanark County?
Favorite hidden gem in Lanark County?
It can be a store, it can be a park, it can be anything.
I think it's the topography of the inner parts of Lanark County, really. That's very vague, maybe, or it's vast land. But if you go up and in around Poland, Ontario, up in Poland and area, there's species of salamanders and species of flora and fauna up there that is not found anywhere else in Ontario.
Oh, really?
And there's a fantastic book by a gentleman that lives up there. He's a doctor, and he has a book about Lanark County and all the flora and fauna and stuff that's there. And the hidden gem is just that topography and what we have there.
I'm going to look into that. That's cool.
I don't know if I have it here or not. It's probably over there.
A treasure trove.
Yeah. And what's the second one?
The last question is, what is the best piece of advice you've ever gotten, and who gave it to you? Whether it's professional or personal. Or alternatively, what would be your piece of advice to somebody?
Work on yourself from the inside out. I've learned that over time. Nobody really ever said that to me, but so many people react to outside forces before they do anything. And I think if we spent more time internally, we talked about energetic, we're energetic beings, the tree's energetic, everybody's energetic beings. We have enough electricity in us to light up New York City kind of thing. If you function from that level on the inside and respond instead of react, I think that's a great thing. It'll take you far, as they say.
Love it. Well, it was such a pleasure talking to you, Bob, and thanks for joining us here on We Know Lanark County, and look forward to seeing you soon in the shop again.
Absolutely. And if people ever want to get a hold of me or talk to me or whatever, they can find me on social media, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, our website, all that kind of good stuff.
Excellent. We'll make sure to put all that in the show notes.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity, and let's do it again.
We will.
Talk real estate.
Sounds like a plan.
All right. Have a great day.
You too. Bye, Bob.
See ya.